friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I'm here for part 1 of my Crochet 101 series. And yes, if you've been with me for a long time, I actually do have a full series out. I already have a part 1, 2, and 3, but for several reasons I need to reshoot those videos. And so that's what I'm going to be doing, at least the first 3, I believe it is. And so if you're new and you're just seeing this for the first time, you can check out my other videos. The first 3 parts are mostly just about the very basic stitches that you'll need to know to get started. But if you're already an experienced crocheter, I do have several videos in the series showing some very simple projects you can do. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about and focus on a little bit in these first few videos is to talk about how to read patterns, how to understand abbreviations, so that if you get a pattern book like I have here, you can be able to read through this pattern and know just how to put this together. Same applies to putting together any kind of sweaters or anything like that, as well as knowing, at least getting yourself a chart to know the crochet hook sizes and how they convert. Me, I know all my sizes by letter. Some people go by number, some people go by the metric, and then the UK and Canada have their own number system for hooks that are different than what we use here in the US. So you can find one of these online. I'll go ahead and link to either this one or another one down below so that you can copy. I just printed this off so I can always have it if I ever get confused. Finding yourself some good hooks is really important. The basic aluminum ones always have a nice shape, but if you're like me and trying to get away from the use of aluminum, another option you can go with is the bamboo hooks. You can usually get those for really inexpensively, get a whole set of them. And I will go ahead and link to the ones I bought in the past. But since then, Patrick has actually been making me hardwood hooks, and he does sell them on the store. However, this is going to be the most expensive way to go because a lot of time and labor goes into him making each one of these hooks by hand. But if you'd like to check out our Etsy store, if you just want to at least take a look at them, I do have the link in the description box down below, first link you'll see, and which will also show up in the end screen. One of the little cards, it's a little red flower. You can click on that too if you ever want to go to our store just to check out what we have. So let's get started on these basics. You're going to learn 2 things on getting started on your crochet. And one is how to make your slip knot. I'm going to be working with a J hook today. And that is how you get your yarn on your hook, and that's the first thing you have to do to get started. There's actually another method called the magic circle that will be used with amigurumi. I do show that in later videos that you can check out, but we're not going to be doing that today. We're going to just be starting with the slip knot and then going on with the chain stitch. You have to learn the chain stitch first before you can move on to any other stitches. So when you're reading your patterns, like this one, this Afghan here, I actually made one very similar to this, just a little bit different colors, but used this very pattern right here and made one for my son, and I'll put a picture of it right here so you can see what that turned out like. And so what it says right here is with the dark blue, CH 261 loosely. So what that means, that CH stands for the chain stitch, and that's the stitch I'll be showing you. Anytime you're making an Afghan, sweaters, most of the things that you're going to make are going to start off with a chain stitch, and this is why it's important to know this one first. And then one more thing, since I'm using the J hook, let's go over what that size is. So here's the J here. It's also known as the number 10. In the UK and Canada, it is a 4, and in the metric, it is a 6.0 millimeter. Okay, so now let's get started by doing our slip knot. So I'm going to bring this yarn across here like this, my hand. I'm getting ready to do that slip knot, right? So around the forefinger, around the ring finger, over here, and then anchor it under my thumb. Okay, let me show that wrap technique again. So just bring it across, around, over here, anchor it down with the thumb. Okay, one more time, a little faster. There you go. Okay, take your hook, go under this outside piece on the forefinger, then hooking that yarn that's being anchored by the thumb Just pull up a loop as you slip your fingers out. Okay, it should look like that. Now you're gonna cinch it up, but not too tightly. You want it maybe just a little bit snug, but not too snug, because you got to be able to pull that hook through there. Because your first stitch you're going to do is that chain stitch. So under this, over that, hook it, pull up that loop, cinch it up. Now notice my pinky and ring finger are holding down the yarn, or anchoring it down from that side. All right, now I do the same thing when I'm holding the yarn. I always keep it, this is just how I do it. There's several different schools of thought on how to hold your yarn in your hand. This is how I do it. Out of habit, I use my ring finger and pinky finger to anchor it there. And then, depending on what stitch I'm doing, I'm either going to take my hook and move it like that with that hand, or I'm going to wrap with this hand. It varies depending on the stitch I'm doing, and I never remember. If I try to slow something down, I won't remember. I have to do it full speed. So I'm going to go ahead and do the chain stitch full speed so you can see how I do it, and then I'll slow it down. And that's pretty much how fast I normally go right there. Okay. So now that I'm seeing how I do this, so here I'm actually wrapping with my left hand. Now in some stitches, like when I'm having to do a couple of yarn overs, I'll use my right hand and wrap it with the hook like that rather than using my left hand to wrap. It depends on what I'm doing and which way is fastest. So we're going to go ahead and do that slip knot again. Now let me show you slowly how to do that chain stitch. The tail should be back here. You're anchoring the yarn you're working from right over here. Okay, so you're going to wrap this over the hook. So now you'll see it looks like you have two loops on the hook. You're going to take your hook and just pull it back as you grab that yarn and pull it up. Now you're back to just one loop on the hook. Do it again. That's your chain stitch right there. Each one, that's 2 chain stitches. This would be 3. Okay, again, wrap, hook, pull up that loop. Wrap, hook, pull up that loop. Wrap, hook, pull up that loop, and again, wrap, hook it back, and pull up that loop. And now you have several chains right there. All right, let's show that again at just a medium speed, not fast, not slow. This is probably just like a standard speed most people would go right here, so that's how it should look. Now that you've got the chain stitch down, you can easily do a project, and I have a video on how to make your own hair ties, but I can show you real quickly how to get started on that. So you can see I'm wearing one here. I've got 3 colors in this. I have charcoal gray, black, and burgundy. So let me grab 3 colors of yarn here. I've got this tweed off-white. I've got a brown, and let's see, here's a burgundy right here. These are actually 3 different thicknesses of yarn, 3 different types or weights, but that's okay. I'm just trying to show you how to do this. So I'm going to go up to the size K hook, and you start off the same way. I make all of my hair ties are always made with 3 strands of yarn at a time, worsted weight yarn. See, I just use the same idea. I'm just crocheting 3 strands at a time. And then you make that chain as long as you want to make it. If you're going to use it as a drawstring, this is also what I use when I make drawstrings for the skirts I make and sell in my store. I always use 3 strands worsted weight yarn, and so I can make a good, strong, sturdy tie out of that. And so you just, you know, there's so many things you could do with a simple tie, with just a simple chain. You can make all kinds of ties. You can make ties for presents or whatever you want. All right, let's go back to just doing 1 strand of yarn, and I'll go ahead and use the brown this time. And let's pretend we're going to do this, start off with this afghan. So when you're working with something where you have to start off, obviously this Afghan is worked this way. It's not worked from the bottom up. It's worked from the long end over. That's how you're able to get this certain wave-like pattern that you've got going on. And you can also tell just because it starts off with 261 chains, because the chain is what you're going to be working into. So when you have that many chains to work with, the best thing to do is to you got to count each one of your chains, which I'm not going to do right now because it's not about the actual counting. I want to show you a way that you can mark your stitches so it keeps you from losing track. Now, the point at which you mark your chains is going to be entirely up to you. But a lot of times when you're reading a pattern, they'll say, put a stitch marker here. There's so many different types of stitch markers you can use. There's some that you can buy. You can take a piece of yarn. So let's say you're wanting to mark 261 stitches. Maybe you want to mark it at every 25, every 50, or even just every 100. That way, if you lose count, you don't have to take the whole thing out or count the whole thing. You just go back to where you were, where you've got your mark. So if you're using a piece of yarn, like a short piece of yarn, you just cut a little snip end, and then you just kind of pull it through that stitch, whatever stitch it is. I'm not going to cut that, but just to show you, that could be your marker there. You can use safety pins. You can use just about anything. What I have found over the years to be the best stitch marker ever, and I just came up with this on my own, was a simple bobby pin. Make sure the bobby pin has the little ends on there, the little rubber ends, and that's going to do two things. It's going to make it slip over the yarn better, and it's going to also hold it in place better. So I don't have to worry about my stitch marker falling out until I'm ready to pull it out, which is super easy to pull it out when I need to. Now, knowing how to, learning best ways for marking your stitches is going to be important when you start putting together sweaters. And when you start doing amigurumi, which is the little stuffed animals. And I'll show you a couple or stuffed characters, I should say. So here's a couple of pictures of some different amigurumi I've made. These are all ones that I've actually made up the pattern myself. When you start doing that, you're working in a spiral. And you're going to need, whenever you're working in a spiral instead of having end rows, you're going to need a good way to mark your stitches. And all that, you can see that on how to do that as far as working in a spiral and the amigurumi and other videos. But I wanted to tell you right off the bat, the best way I found to mark stitches is using a bobby pin. But you may find something you like better, and you may find that you prefer to just buy the stitch markers, but to me they're kind of a waste of money, and I didn't think they looked like they would work as easily as a bobby pin. Also, when it comes to looking for patterns, for Afghans, these kind of books here, I actually got these on sale at a local store, our local craft store, and these have really great Afghan designs. I have made all kinds of blankets out of these, using quite a bit of the patterns. Like, I've made one like this, tons of different ones. I've even made, let's see, I've made this one before, the spiral. I made it for my sister-in-law. And so these blue ribbon Afghans, or the year of Afghans, and they have different books. And the thing that's nice about a lot of these books like this is sometimes if you have any question about anything, is you can go to the back of the book and it will show you how to do various stitches that might be in the patterns. And even online, when you look for stuff online, good instructions, sometimes they will explain the various stitches and how to do them. But it's important to know how to read your patterns because and all your abbreviations, because not all the patterns you get are going to explain those to you. So learn how to read patterns, because once you learn how to read your patterns, you're going to be able to do a lot more different things, such as being able to make your own sweaters. You cannot, that's one of those things. You might be able to come up with an Afghan pattern off of knowing just a few basic stitches, but in order to do something that's a little more complicated, like a sweater or anything like that, or the amigurumi, you really got to know how to read patterns. So I suggest that you learn to read the pattern as you're learning to crochet. And I will cover more on how to read patterns and their abbreviations in my next video where we talk about how to do the single crochet. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're just learning to crochet, I hope you can get started making that chain stitch today, and I will try to get part 2 out real soon. Okay, well, thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.